Okay, so today I'm going to talk about the preterite versus the imperfect. Remember, they are two past tenses. Both of them are simple past tenses um, in um, in Spanish, but we only have one simple past tense in English. So you always have to decide, why am I going to use the preterite or why am I going to use the imperfect? So the imperfect, really, your big thing is that you're going to talk about single events or beginnings and endings, okay? With our imperfect, you're going to talk about an action that's not been completed or not been perfected, okay, an incomplete action. Or you're going to talk about a habitual action, something that you used to do. That's the idea that I used to do it. You're also going to use the imperfect when you're describing a person, a place, or a thing. When you're talking about the weather in the past, or when you're telling time in the past. Only when you have to say what time it was in the past. So, for example, it was a dark and stormy night. The princess was beautiful and intelligent. She was talking to her hero. All of these things are in the imperfect tense if I were going to be writing them in Spanish. So, it was dark and stormy night. Means we're talking about the weather. Okay? We're describing the weather. The princess was beautiful and intelligent. We're describing a person, a place, or a thing. She was talking to her hero. Okay? This is an incomplete action because then the enemy entered the palace, fought with the warrior, and carried away the princess. These are all single events. It's a series of single events, but they all happened one time. The enemy entered the palace, fought with the warrior, and carried away the princess. Single events. Entered, fought, carried her away. Okay. So how does this relate to your hero project? Remember, you're going to have to say when your hero was born, okay, and when he died. Both of these things happened one time. So to say when he was born, you're going to use the verb nacer in the preterite tense, which is probably going to look like this: nació. Él nació or ella nació. And then he died. Again, he only died once. Single event. And remember, it is a stem changing verb. It's one of those flip-flop verbs that we've talked about. So it's murió. The O changes to U in the preterite tense for that LA usted and ellos ellas ustedes form. And then all of the actions that he did, whatever it was that he did or she did to be heroic, those are things you're going to use the preterite tense for. In the other column over here, imperfect, you're going to use the imperfect when you're using making a physical description or personality description of the hero. And the verb you're going to use here is ser, okay? So a lot of it is going to be, remember, ser is irregular. So when you put it into the imperfect tense, you're probably going to use era. El era, ella era, whatever it is. Then here, if ever, I'm not sure if you're going to need to use this, but if you have to say what age this person was when they did something, you're going to use, again, the verb tener, which would, of course, get conjugated to tenía. And there are some key phrases that help you to know when you're supposed to use imperfect and when you're supposed to use the preterite. So all of our preterite ones, the key phrases are generally going to have a specific time associated with them. For example, yesterday, last night, last year, last month, in a specific year, or anytime you're using this, anytime when you're saying that something is done at a specific time. Do not confuse this with telling time. Okay, telling time is something very different. We'll get over to it on the imperfect side. So imperfect, you're going to have a lot of frequency phrases. Why would you use frequency phrases? Well, frequency phrases are always going to indicate that it was a habitual action. Okay? If you did it always, siempre, you had a habit of it. If you did it never, again, that's a habit that you never did it. If you did it sometimes, it's habitual. You did it more than once at a repeated action. So habitual or a repeated action. Something that you used to do. You could definitely say this. You used to do this. And apparently I cannot spell at the same time as I talk. So bear with me here. Habitual or repeated action. Now over here, these yesterdays, last nights, last year, last month, okay, these have a very specific single event feeling to them, okay? These are more like single events. On the preterite side, okay? Single events, last year, last night, last month. Also, you might think last summer, okay? Last fall. All of those would go here in a specific time. Okay? Now, the one difference I said was about telling time. When you want to tell time, you are going to use the imperfect. Okay? The imperfect is going to be used to tell time. Remember, when it was 1 o'clock, you're only going to use era, just like you do in present tense, es la una. And if you wanted to say it was 2 o'clock, you're going to make that the plural, eran las dos. Okay. That's a pretty basic rundown of when you use the preterite and the imperfect. I'm hoping that this helps you get it right at least most of the time. Thank you for watching.